Hi lovelies, Corey here, and welcome back to my channel. This video, I just kind of wanted to pop on and have just like a chat with you guys. And wanted that chat to be about hitting a wall in witchcraft, where maybe you're just moving along, your practice gets stale, for whatever reason, you're just not in it anymore. You notice that you're not practicing the things that you used to do, that you used to love, you just aren't doing anymore, right? And that could be in your spiritual practice, your witchcraft practice, both. Mine's a combination. So I'm going to use those two words interchangeably. But for the most part, we're talking about a craft practice for the purposes of this video. And getting into a kind of funk or just hitting a roadblock or finding that my practice just kind of drops off is something that happens to me every few years anyway. There's a lull in my practice. I notice that repetition isn't really my thing. I get bored with stuff. I want to learn something new. Or I just notice that I stop doing the things that I used to do because they don't feel in alignment with me anymore. So if any of those things sound familiar to you, or if you notice that, hey, you're kind of in this spot as well, I want to talk about some of the things that have been getting me out of this weird in-between dead space that I've been in, and really have been in for the last 9 months. Not necessarily that long. I would say I've been gradually getting out of it for the past 6 weeks, but for a good solid 8 months there, I was having a hard time. And this time it wasn't a sort of gradual slowdown or kind of tapering off of what I was doing. I pretty much just skidded to a halt with that car crash that happened in April. And trauma can do that too. Trauma can just knock you completely out of your routine, completely out of what it was that you were doing. And I would say that I was sort of gradually moving into a new space with my practice before the car accident. I was starting to look at different topics that I wanted to study more over the course of 2019. That didn't really happen. I had all of these plans for these things that I was going to do, and they just got tossed to the side when that car accident occurred. I was focused on basically rehabilitation at the time, focused on getting physically better and not necessarily working on my practice at all. And that happens, right? It's pretty understandable, but I noticed that I wasn't picking back up with my craft practice after I got to a really good space physically. Now, I'm not by any means 100% healed, but once I was able to kind of get back on my feet, I had more time and space to go back and pick up my craft practice where I left off, and I just didn't want to do that. And that was something that I had to work on from a shadow work perspective. I wasn't the same person that I was before the accident, and that needed to be dealt with before I could move on. Now, that's not to say that trauma is the only, like I said, sort of catalyst for hitting a roadblock in your craft practice, hitting a stale patch. But that's what happened to me this time around. So let's dive into some of the things that have been helping me out. First and foremost, showing up. I had to get into a space where I was doing little things, at least. Things as small as just cleaning my altar, right? Changing out the altar cloth, dusting the space, tending, making offerings again, actual libations. And the spirits in my home tend to love tea and bread. Any sort of pastries, cookies are a big one in my house. It's what the spirits enjoy. So making those offerings again, because it had been months and making sure that I kept up with them, right? Disposing of them, flowers that I would leave, making sure that they weren't, wilting on top of the altar, cleaning them off. So just basically doing a little bit of maintenance. It got me to show up at my altar, right? And then from there, daily draws started happening again because I switched out the tarot decks. I noticed little things like, wait, that doesn't make sense to be there anymore. So I would trade it out. I would move things around. And it got me just spending a little bit of time each day, at least there, focused on my practice. Even if I wasn't doing anything, like I said, I wasn't making any devotionals at that point other than small offerings. And I was really only making them, once a week, once every couple of weeks during the summer. It wasn't that large. But just the act of being there, right? Having my attention all focused on my altar, in that sacred space, in that moment. Just the act of cleaning physically made me start thinking about energetically cleaning. Okay, what do I need to change here to change up the energy? And it got those wheels slowly but surely turning again. The next thing that I did to really kind of just pull me out, I'm someone that really appreciates structure. And when I get into a space where I don't necessarily know where to go or what to do next, it's kind of like, ooh, my anxiety sets in and I just kind of get locked into space. And then I go, well, there's too many choices. I'm not going to do anything. So if that sounds familiar to you, actually finding a tradition, which you guys have known if you watch previous videos, is the Temple of Witchcraft. I signed up for Witchcraft 1. And, as you can see, there has been studying going on. And, I've had the e-version of this book for almost 10 years, but I needed the physical copy. I needed to be present while I was listening to, classes, reading books, hence all of the stickies that you see here. And we're only, halfway through the book at this point. But having structured lessons, and it doesn't need to be with Temple of Witchcraft, it can be with any sort of tradition or formal training. If you don't want to dedicate yourself to a course, because I can understand how overwhelming that can be, or even a tradition, have historically been a eclectic Celtic witch for the most part, and a pretty nomadic practitioner. I've been in and out of circles for the last 20 years, mostly practicing solitary. And when I've joined people, it's never been for a really long period of time. And it's just kind of been as, additional party, like an honorary guest, if you will. Just someone staying and practicing with them for a few months and then moving on, being solitary again, moving on to the next group, participating in a lot of their group rituals and then, moving back out again. So I get that that's not for everyone. Okay. I'm not saying just go out there and join the first tradition you see, but even like finding a class that you're really interested in taking, but one that has formal lessons so that you're given the information, you can digest it through exercises, and through those exercises, you're actually practicing. You're making the effort. When you're being held accountable, because you have to turn in homework, you have to follow lessons, you have to do the work, you're more apt to do it, right? You're more likely to actually get it done because there's someone going, hey, did you do this? You have to report back to someone and you want to make sure that you get it done. And you don't have to think, and be creative and come up with your own ritual or form, right? It's not something that you have to craft yourself. You can obviously change stuff around as it suits you, depending on the flexibility of the class or the course that you're taking, but you don't have to, pull it out of thin air. You don't have to think it up yourself, is what I was trying to say. Didn't do a very eloquent job, by the way. But you're provided the lessons, you're provided the exercises, and then all you have to do is show up and do the work. But getting into the act of actually doing the work can help bring you out of that funk and, in fact, inspire you to add new things to your practice. As I go through classes and take courses and things, there are some exercises, sure, that don't work out for me. I'll keep trying it for a while, but if it doesn't seem like it's going to fit my practice, I don't add it in. And if there are elements that I really jive with and I'm like, yeah, this is working, I incorporate that into my regular practice long after the class is come and gone. And really, that's kind of the point, right? Is to keep the ball rolling. And that's really what this does, is it gives you new and fresh material, but it gives you that accountability to say, hey, I'm handing everything that you need to get this done on a silver platter. All you need to do is show up and do the work. And for someone like me, I'm really appreciative of having that, having that box that I can stick with, that formula, if you will, just to kind of get me going again. And then the last thing that I've been doing, you guys are all well aware of, I've been snatching up books left and right, but on topics that I wouldn't normally reach out and read about. I was looking at my bookshelf before the start of this video. I have an entire shelf of just tarot books off to the side here that you can't see. I have a huge built-in bookcase over here. There's an entire shelf of tarot books. There's an entire shelf that's like 90s Wicca witchcraft. I have half of a shelf on shamanism. The other half is filled up with, goddess books specifically. Some god books. There's also above that some devotionals specifically for Freyr and Persephone. There's a lot on there, a lot on energy work, a whole shelf down here in the bottom on crystals, just books on crystals coming out of my ears, because I studied and got certified in crystal healing in 2016. And, that was a big focus. So each one of these shelves essentially represents a niche that I've stuck to for at least 3 or more years, where this is like my, and it's kind of a map of my craft practice over the last 20 years. Some books that I've had early in my craft practice, I don't have anymore, sadly. I only have a handful of books, and they're primarily from, Scott Cunningham. I don't have any of my silver books anymore. I wish I did. A lot of Gramasi's books, I kept all of those, and just a couple from Eden McCoy. And I got rid of a ton of those and a ton of books from DJ Conway that I really wish I still had. Got rid of a large number of my Ray Buckland books too. But I have a lot of Kindle versions of those, and they're also books that I've read over and over again. A lot of these books, I look at the shelf and I'm like, I've read this book like 20 times. And at this point, I don't know that there's really a whole lot of new insight that I'm going to get in reviewing these books, even now. So it's time to branch out. It was time to look at the things that I hadn't normally looked at. So you guys know about all of the books that I purchased, and received from Aeon Sophia Press on the left-hand path. The books that I picked up from Scarlet Imprint on, the Red Goddess, and Apocalyptic Witchcraft as well from Peter Gray. A lot of Peter Gray books I had picked up. Books on traditional witchcraft, specifically traditional British witchcraft, that I picked up from Troy Books. And in addition to those, recently getting the Serpent of Wisdom inspired me to, pick up spiritual alchemy. One of my strongest techniques is spirit channeling and connecting with spirits and communicating with spirits. I don't have a lot of books that just talk about spirit communication. Yeah, I know. I have a lot of books that have chapters that discuss spirit communication. And then I have a lot of personal experience. I didn't have books that were dedicated just to spiritual communication. And this book's not, fully, but when I picked up this one, which does talk a bit about spiritual communication, at least that's what it advertises in the back. I was like, I need more. So I ended up picking up this guy, Spirit Conjuring for Witches. And I've not read anything from Frater Barabbas. He is a Alexandrian trained and initiated witch. He co-founded another tradition, I believe, practicing for 35 years, founder of a magical order called the Order of the Gnostic Star. So I just read the excerpt of, that Amazon kind of provides you for books. And I was like, yeah, I think I need that in my life. And then because of that, I ended up picking up a physical copy of The Witch's Book of Spirits. Now, I have the Kindle version of this. I have all 3 in the series. This is actually book number 2 in Devin Hunter's Witch's Book series. The first one is A Witch's Book of Power, and then the third one is The Witch's Book of Mysteries. I have all 3. Why did I get a physical copy? Basically because I'm one of those people that if I have to deep dive into a subject, like I said, I want to take notes. I want to dog-ear it. I want to stick, Post-it notes in it. You guys should see some of the books on my shelf. Oh my goodness. They are battered and bruised for a reason. So I'm like, I need to have a copy in my hands as I go through this, especially if I'm going to do a huge deep dive into spirit communication, which of course, now that I have it in my hands, I'm like, now I need physical copies of the other 2. Because I'm me. I'm not going to get them. I do want to make sure that I focus on the books that I have right now before I move on to those. And I'm actually am reading The Witch's Book of Power on my Kindle right now. It's open up. I think I'm on chapter 4. So they will be read. It's not like I'm losing out on anything, not having the physical copies, but I like to take notes. So do what's going to be best for you and what's going to get you motivated. You know yourself better than anyone. If you, like me, and you need to have physical copies, get the physical copies. You can get them from secondhand stores. Check them out of the library. Book Depository has a lot of great secondhand copies. Thrift books, Abe books, they all have, I've been really looking up secondhand stores online for books now because there are a lot of out-of-print books that I'm trying to get my hands on at the moment. But use those resources. Trade with other witches. There are a lot of Facebook groups that have or a lot of Facebook groups that are book trading groups that you can post in, trade books with folks, and really you're only out postage. And then you can get a new book and really get some new information to sink your teeth into so that you've got a jumping off point to really, like I said, it's about showing up, right? It's about getting back into the habit little by little of doing the work. So even if you're not doing anything right now, you can read something new outside of your niche or comfort zone to use as kind of a jumping off point to inspire you. Maybe you don't use everything in that book, but maybe like the Serpent of Wisdom, that review that I did earlier in the week, maybe you'll pick up a book that you don't directly pull everything from, but will give you little tidbits, little threads that you can tug on and follow those threads through to new techniques, new traditions to explore, new magical systems to work with. At least find something to reignite that spark for you so that you are practicing again, you know? And that was something that I really needed to work on. And it was slow moving, you guys. This wasn't like, boom, the next day I was back on my feet. This has been 6 weeks of really like pushing. Me cleaning my altar and showing up at my altar, like I said, made me look at the tarot decks on there and go, okay, I need to clean these out. What tarot deck is calling to me? I'll at least set it on my altar space. I'll let it soak up the vibes. And then all of a sudden I noticed that because I was there every day, I was back to doing daily draws. I was back to writing those down. I was back to writing down synchronicities that I had seen, you know, just in my book of mirrors that I was carrying around. Going through class material, making notes on my phone. I have entire notepads on my phone, just pages and pages of text notes of just things that I think of while I'm out and about or at work, or while I'm listening to class lessons, while I'm reading other books. And the flow of inspiration has been turned back on. It took me a minute. I was in a funk for a long time. 8 months is a long time for just being completely out of it. But I'm getting there. I'm still not 100% yet. I don't feel like me again in my practice, but I feel the shift. So if you're in that space, I hope one of these things can work for you. And if you're listening or watching this video, listening to or watching this video, and there's something that worked for you that I didn't mention, feel free to leave it in the comments below if you feel so opened. You know, no pressure to share anything ever on this channel. But if you do feel so inclined, you know, please feel free to share. This is an open space, and I'm hoping to keep sharing a lot of experiences in the hopes that they inspire someone, or at the very least, you know, you can see what works for you and what doesn't. And at least just know that if you're in this space, you're not alone. I am riding that wave with you. Okay. And wherever you are, I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day, lovely. And I cannot wait to see you guys in the next video. Until then, blessed be.